HFY stories, humans in space, they all start with a spark, a rumor, or a moment no one thought mattered until it shook the galaxy. If you love epic HFY tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Stick around till the end for the full adventure.
The first transmission came through Earth's deep space array on a late spring night. Hidden under the usual background noise of pulsars and interstellar static, Dr. Evelyn Rourke nearly dismissed it as an equipment glitch until the patterns repeated, 3 times in perfect sequence. Numbers, prime numbers carved out of cosmic whispers. It was the kind of thing SETI dreamers talked about in bars, never expecting it to happen in their lifetimes. Her first instinct wasn't excitement, it was dread. Because if someone was counting across the stars, they already knew math, already knew logic. And beings who understood those things didn't just shout into the void for fun. They wanted to be found. Within weeks, the story broke wide open. Governments tried to suppress it, corporations tried to buy it, and religious leaders tried to frame it as prophecy. But ordinary people, the ones who still logged into old forums and swapped campfire legends of humans being underestimated in space, they understood what was coming. Humanity wasn't alone, and that meant history was about to pivot. The signal's origin point was triangulated to a sector some 60 light-years out, in a dense cluster no human telescope had ever mapped clearly. Faster than light travel had always been a theory shoved into science fiction shelves, but buried inside the signal was more than numbers. There were schematics, engineering data wrapped in encryption no one cracked for months. When they did, it rewrote physics overnight. The drive wasn't a warp bubble, wasn't a wormhole generator, it was something else entirely. A manipulation of inertia and momentum using quantum entanglement as a lever. What the media branded the torch drive. The first ships were disasters, explosions, melted hulls, crews who never came back. But one of them did, the Magellan, captained by a half-retired Navy officer named Marcus Hale. He wasn't the smartest pilot, not by a long shot, but he had what every human pioneer needed: an almost reckless refusal to quit. When his test run spiraled into a slingshot that should have vaporized him, Hale somehow stabilized the drive with nothing but instinct and a prayer. And when he limped back to Earth, battered but alive, the world erupted. Space opened. Within a decade, humans were scattering outward, establishing shaky colonies on moons and half-broken rocks that no sane alien would have bothered with. What no one knew, at least not yet, was that humanity hadn't just stumbled onto freedom. They'd walked into the middle of an ancient political game. The Galactic Federation wasn't a single empire, but a lattice of species bound by treaties, rules, and centuries of negotiated compromises. For most civilizations, first contact came with ceremony and careful integration, but humanity had skipped the whole entry process. By building torch drives from stolen blueprints and hurling themselves into the dark, they'd trespassed. The first encounter wasn't friendly. The Magellan, too bigger, better armed, full of scientists and Marines, intercepted what they thought was an asteroid in a system to jumps out from Sol. Turned out it was no rock. The ship unfurled like a metallic flower, plates shifting, weapon ports glowing. The voice that came through the comms was dry, brittle, and full of contempt. You'll cease your expansion immediately. This sector is under the stewardship of the Federation. Unauthorized vessels will be destroyed. Evelyn Rourke was on that ship, sitting in the science bay, and she remembered the silence that followed. Humans had trained for aliens, yes, but not for the tone, the way it sounded like a teacher scolding a child caught cheating. Captain Hale, still at the helm, didn't flinch. He leaned into the comms, voice sharp, all-American grit layered with the kind of confidence that came from bar fights and bad decisions. "This is the Magellan, too. We're explorers, not trespassers, and we don't take kindly to being told to sit still." The standoff stretched hours. Sensors mapped out the alien ship, a fortress compared to the human vessel. Every tactical model predicted Earth's side would be wiped clean if things went hot. But humans had something models didn't measure, an edge born from desperation. Instead of retreating, Hale ordered the ship closer, weaving through the aliens' blockade maneuvers with daredevil precision. His gamble wasn't about winning a fight, it was about making a point. Humans didn't fold just because the odds looked bad. That single moment, recorded and shared across every channel back home, lit the fuse of humanity's reputation. The Federation's diplomats finally arrived days later, furious and formal. But by then the damage was done. Aliens had seen what humans were like: fragile, under-equipped, untrained in galactic politics, but utterly unwilling to back down. Federation envoys tried to impose sanctions, restrictions, probationary trials, but every attempt to box humans in backfired. Colonists kept pushing boundaries, sometimes failing spectacularly, sometimes thriving in environments no other species tolerated. Radiation storms, zero-atmosphere mining, frozen deserts, humans made them home with duct tape, stubbornness, and a strange knack for improvisation. What baffled alien observers wasn't human aggression, it was human adaptability. A dozen species wrote reports. These bipeds exhibit a survival compulsion, disproportionate to their technological level. Others put it simpler: humans do not stop. Behind the politics, Evelyn kept working. She wasn't just cataloging worlds, she was searching for whoever had sent that first signal. The Federation claimed they didn't know. She didn't buy it. The encryption inside the torch drive hinted at a civilization older than the Federation itself, one that had vanished or gone silent. If humans were really meant to inherit scraps from a ghost race, the question was why. Her answer came in fragments: ruins on barren worlds, dead stations orbiting gas giants, artifacts that hummed faintly when touched by human hands. The Federation studied them for millennia with no results. Humans, somehow, could activate them. It wasn't magic. It was resonance. The builders had encoded their machines to respond to neural patterns. Patterns humans just happened to share. And that was the detail that would change everything. By the time Earth realized it, humans weren't just newcomers crashing a galactic party. They were inheritors of a legacy no one else could touch. The revelation didn't explode all at once. It spread like an ember drifting through dry grass, passed in whispers from one outpost to another. Engineers noticed at first how humans could touch alien relics and coax them into life, while every other species got only silence. A mining foreman on Sirius colony swore that when a worker brushed his gloved hand across an artifact, it lit up like a Christmas tree. The Federation dispatched inspectors, only to find the thing already humming with power, responding exclusively to the humans who touched it. It was Evelyn Rourke who pieced the puzzle together, cross-referencing old Federation archives with her own field data. She published a paper, quiet at first, in a restricted access science net. The title was dry, academic, neural concordance and artifact resonance, but its conclusion was anything but subtle. Humans possess unique neuroelectric signatures aligned with precursor technology. The probability of coincidence is negligible. We must consider the hypothesis that humans were either influenced in their evolutionary path or directly designed by the vanished builders. The Federation hated it. They censored the paper, discredited Evelyn. even threatened to strip her of research access. But they couldn't stop the rumors, or the undeniable evidence piling up across the frontier. Every miner, every colonist, every ragtag explorer who stumbled across ancient machines added fuel to the fire. Humans could wake up ghosts of the past. Diplomats called it politically destabilizing. Citizens of other species called it unfair. To the average human, though, it was destiny. Captain Marcus Hale wasn't a man who cared much for science or politics, but he knew a shift when he saw one. The moment Evelyn confided her findings to him in the dim mess hall of the Magellan II, he just leaned back in his chair, sipped his stale coffee, and said, "Well, hell, no wonder they're scared of us," because fear was exactly what the Federation was feeling. For centuries, their balance of power relied on predictability. Species joined, treaties held, and even rivalries followed rules. But humans didn't just bend rules, they broke them, sometimes without realizing. And now they had leverage, access to technology no one else could touch. The first political crisis erupted on New Carthage, a barren dust ball colonized by desperate Earth refugees. A builder artifact was uncovered in a canyon wall, half buried, humming faintly like a heartbeat. The Federation tried to seize it, citing preservation laws. The colonists refused. When inspectors tried to force their way in, the artifact lit up, projecting a shield that only dropped when a human child walked up and touched it. The standoff turned bloody, shots fired. Protests erupted on both sides. For the first time, human settlers openly defied Federation authority and survived. The Federation Council convened in panic. Species argued over whether to quarantine humanity, uplift them under supervision, or ban them entirely from expansion. But while they debated, humans kept moving. Torch drive ships multiplied, colonies spread, and artifacts flickered back to life in human hands. Evelyn, meanwhile, pressed deeper. She convinced Hale to take the Magellan II into uncharted space, chasing the pattern of signals hidden inside the torch drive blueprints. Every jump pulled them further from safe territory, deeper into the unknown. The crew was a mix of veterans, idealists, and misfits. Sergeant Daniel Grizz Morales, a Marine who'd fought on 3 colonies and swore like a poet. Dr. Aisha Patel, a medic with a steel spine and dry humor. Lieutenant Sarah Keegan, Hale's right hand and the best pilot in the fleet. They weren't diplomats. They weren't even the best Earth had to offer. But they were the ones willing to follow Hale into hell if that's where the stars pointed. Their journey took them to a system no Federation map listed, orbiting a dying red star. On a scorched planet's surface, they found a structure alien, angular, untouched for eons. At its heart, a chamber glowing with light the moment Evelyn stepped inside. Symbols scrolled across the walls, rearranging themselves into something readable. A message not spoken, but implanted directly into the minds of every human present. You were not meant to awaken yet, but you are here, and so the sequence begins anew. The chamber pulsed, releasing energy waves that rippled across space. Federation sensors picked it up instantly. So did others, forces far beyond the Council's reach. Because the builders weren't just myth. They'd had enemies. The first sign came weeks later, when ships unlike any Federation design appeared. At the edge of human-settled space. Black hulls, silent drives, weapons that bent light itself. They weren't explorers. They weren't diplomats. They were predators, drawn by the signal humans had unknowingly unleashed. The Federation panicked, their fleets scrambled, unprepared for an enemy that should have been extinct. Old records called them the Kethria species that had warred with the Builders, until both vanished in fire. And now, thanks to humanity's resonance. The Ketheri knew where to hunt again. For once, the Federation needed humanity, not because of numbers, not because of strength, but because only humans could access the technology that might stop the Ketheri. The Council's emissaries came crawling to Earth, draped in silks and ceremony, masking fear with pomp. They offered conditional alliances, military aid, even membership, things they'd sworn were decades away. But they couldn't hide the truth. The galaxy's balance had shifted, and humans were holding the key. Hale didn't trust them. Evelyn didn't either. But when the first Ketheri raid hit a colony in the Kepler belt, slaughtering settlers, glassing habitats, leaving nothing but ash, they realized there was no choice. Humanity couldn't fight alone. And so, for the first time, humans marched into the Federation Assembly, not as supplicants, but as partners demanded by necessity. The chamber was a spectacle, hundreds of species arrayed in concentric tiers, banners and holograms shimmering in the air. Most had never seen a human in person. The murmurs that rippled through the crowd when Hale, Evelyn, and their crew stepped forward were thick with curiosity, disdain, and most of all, fear. Evelyn gave the speech. She wasn't a politician, but she spoke with fire. You underestimated us. You told us to stay small. You tried to cage us while the galaxy burned around you. But we're still here, and we're not backing down. If the Ketheri want a war, they'll have to go through us. And if you want to survive, you'd better stand with us, not above us. Silence followed. Then, slowly, one species after another pledged their support, not out of loyalty, but because they saw the writing on the wall. Humanity wasn't just another young race anymore. Humanity was the Wildcard. War was coming, and for the first time in millennia, the galaxy was about to find out what happened when humans, fragile, reckless, stubborn humans, were pushed to the edge. The war didn't start with battles, it started with fear. Every colony on the frontier felt it in the silence between communications, in the long shadows of mining tunnels, in the way settlers looked up at the sky wondering if black-hulled ships were lurking just beyond the stars. On Mars, the first civilian evacuation drills were broadcast on every channel. Kids carried stuffed animals into bunkers while their parents packed survival kits they prayed they'd never use. On Luna, posters went up, "Remember New Carthage, never again." On Earth, crowds swarmed the streets demanding answers. Why had the Federation hidden the truth about the Ketheri? Why had humans been the ones to wake them? The Federation tried to control the narrative. Press releases framed humans as reluctant allies, a necessary nuisance with a knack for artifacts. But the truth spread faster, carried on pirate radio, independent feeds, and backroom whispers. For the first time, alien citizens began asking their own governments uncomfortable questions. If humans could fight, why couldn't they? The Ketheri struck again before answers came. This time, not a colony, but a convoy, a fleet of 30 torch-drive freighters hauling food and water. Recyclers to the Kepler settlements. The raiders came out of nowhere, cutting through the escort ships like paper, leaving nothing but frozen debris and a scattering of distress signals. The Magellan too was among the first responders, jumping in just hours too late. The wreckage field stretched for thousands of kilometers, spinning husks and shattered cargo pods drifting in silence. Hale ordered search and rescue immediately. Evelyn, scanning for survivors, found something else, traces of energy signatures in the wreckage. Not just Ketheri weapons, but builder tech. The Ketheri weren't just predators. They'd scavenged the same legacy humans were waking up, and they knew how to twist it into weapons. That revelation hit the Federation Assembly like a thunderclap. Panic spread through the chambers. If the Ketheri mastered builder artifacts faster than humans could, the war was already lost. But Evelyn saw an angle. They can use the technology, she told the assembly, her voice steady despite the chaos. But they can't resonate with it the way we can. That gives us an edge. If you want to survive this, you need us at the heart of every strike group. Not as tokens, as leaders. The declaration was bold, almost suicidal, yet no one could refute it. Thus began Project Aegis, the galaxy's first joint war initiative led by humans. Training camps opened on Earth, Mars, and Titan, where alien recruits drilled alongside human Marines. At first, the cultural clashes were laughable. Towering reptilian Avethi struggling to understand human sarcasm. Insectoid Lyarkani recoiling from the smell of coffee. Amphibious Dravik baffled by the concept of barbecue. But in the chaos of training exercises, something strange happened. They started learning from each other. Morales became infamous for his field improvisation classes, teaching alien soldiers how to turn scrap metal and duct tape into battlefield tools. Doesn't matter if it's pretty, he'd bark, slamming two welded plates together. If it holds for 5 seconds longer than it should, it's the difference between you breathing or not. The aliens thought it was madness until they saw it work. Keegan taught pilots the fine art of gut instinct, something no Federation simulator could replicate. Trust the math, sure, she'd say. But when the math says you're already dead, sometimes you've got to flip the damn table. And Hale just led by example. No matter how bad the odds, he kept moving forward. His stubbornness was infectious. Meanwhile, Evelyn pushed deeper into the Builder's legacy, with human test subjects volunteering across colonies. She mapped the neural resonance patterns that activated artifacts. The patterns weren't uniform. They varied wildly between individuals, so much so that certain artifacts only responded to specific people. That discovery created an entirely new role in the war resonance. Humans who could wield builder technology like extensions of their own bodies. Shields, weapons, starship systems all tuned to their unique mental fingerprints. It was unpredictable, dangerous, sometimes deadly to the user, but it gave the Federation something it had never had before: human-powered superweapons. The first major battle came at the Taurus Rift, a stretch of unstable space where a Federation relay station was under siege. The Ketheri had brought a fleet, sleek, black predators swarming like sharks. The Federation mustered everything it could, but morale was low. No one had ever beaten the Ketheri in open combat. The Magellan arrived at the center of the defense. Hale at the helm, Evelyn manning the resonant interface. Morales barking orders to mixed-species Marines. As the battle unfolded, human improvisation made the difference. Keegan pulled maneuvers no Federation ship dared attempt, weaving torch. Drive jumps into hairpin turns that left Ketheri hunters overshooting their prey. Morales led boarding parties that turned disabled freighters into makeshift missile platforms. Evelyn, her hands trembling on the interface, activated an ancient shield generator buried in the station's core, something the Federation had written off as inert centuries ago. The shield flared to life just as the Ketheri unleashed a barrage that would have gutted the station. Instead, the firepower dissipated harmlessly against a glowing barrier. For the first time in living memory, the Ketheri were forced to retreat. The victory wasn't decisive, but it was symbolic. Across the galaxy, feeds broadcast images of human-led forces standing against the darkness, and the message was clear. The Ketheri could be fought, but victory came with a cost. Evelyn collapsed after the battle. Her neural patterns burned out from overuse. For days, she drifted in and out of consciousness. visions of symbols and voices haunting her dreams. She spoke fragments aloud, words that didn't sound like her own. They are watching. The sequence is incomplete. The war is not theirs alone. Hale stayed at her side, gruffly brushing off concerns, but even he knew something deeper was at play. The builders hadn't just left tools. They'd left a plan humanity was now tangled in. And the Ketheri weren't slowing down. Reports poured in of entire systems burned, of Federation fleets shattered. For every battle won, two were lost. The enemy was learning, adapting, twisting builder tech into horrors humanity couldn't match. Until Evelyn woke one night, eyes wide, and whispered to Hale, "There's a place they can't follow, a place only we can reach. The answer's there." She didn't know how she knew, but Hale didn't hesitate. He called the crew together, laid it out plain. They were going off the books, beyond the front, chasing a lead into the kind of black space even the Federation feared. Because that was humanity's way, not to wait, not to hide, but to go where no one else dared. The journey beyond the frontier began with silence. No Federation escorts, no chatter from nearby colonies, just the Magellan to threading torch drive jumps into uncharted black, following coordinates Evelyn couldn't explain, but insisted were true. Her visions had grown sharper since the Taurus rift. At first, they were just fragments, symbols flashing across her mind's eye, whispers of alien voices in her dreams. But now they came when she was awake, sometimes mid-conversation, halting her words as if someone else was speaking through her. The crew worried, but Evelyn was resolute. "I don't know how I know," she admitted in the briefing room, her voice ragged. But the builders left a trail, not written, not carved in stone, but alive, woven into resonance itself. Humans can feel it. If we follow it, we'll find something the Ketheri can't touch. Hale didn't argue. He just crossed his arms and said, "Then that's where we're going." The further they traveled, the stranger space became. Torch drive jumps grew turbulent. Gravity waves spiked without warning, and even hardened veterans felt unease settling into their bones. The Avethi crewmen assigned to their task force called it the Shatter Expanse, a region Federation maps marked as cursed, haunted by failed expeditions and lost fleets. It took them 3 weeks to find the beacon. It wasn't a station, not in any conventional sense. It was a lattice of stone and metal the size of a small moon, drifting in orbit around a dead star. At first glance, it looked like ruins, shattered towers, hollow bridges, empty halls. But when Evelyn set foot inside, the structure woke. Light poured across its surfaces, cascading in waves that pulsed with rhythm like a heartbeat. Symbols rearranged themselves into patterns only she could understand. The chamber at the core unfolded like a flower, revealing what looked like a stasis pod, untouched for millennia. The moment Evelyn placed her hand on the pod, her vision flooded. She wasn't in the chamber anymore. She was standing in a vast plain beneath a red sky, surrounded by towering figures of light. They spoke in unison, their voices echoing in her skull. "We are the architects. We seeded the stars with pathways. You are the key we left behind. The Ketheri are the wound that never healed. If you would survive, you must remember." Images blazed across her mind, cities floating above oceans, ships that bent galaxies like glass, wars that burned constellations to ash. She saw the builders, as they were, brilliant, arrogant, undone by their own hubris. She saw the Ketheri rising from the ashes of their war, shaped as predators, sharpened by hunger. And she saw humanity, a young species, unremarkable, except for one thing: humans fit the lock. Not by accident, not by coincidence. The builders had left their legacy coded into neural resonance patterns, scattered like seeds across potential worlds. Humanity wasn't the only attempt, but it was the one that survived. When Evelyn staggered back to reality, her breath came in shuddering gasps. Hale caught her before she collapsed, steadying her by the shoulders. "What did you see?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes wide. "We weren't a mistake. We were chosen." The chamber confirmed it. The stasis pod opened, not with machinery, but with light forming a crystalline shard that pulsed in time with Evelyn's heartbeat. When slotted into the Magellan II systems, the shard transformed the ship. Shields became stronger, weapons more precise, torch drive more efficient. It was as if the vessel itself had awakened. But power never came without a cost. The moment they activated the shard, the Ketheri came. 3 ships, black and silent, emerging from the void like sharks, drawn to blood. Their weapons cut across space, beams warping light as they converged on the Magellan II. Keegan yanked the ship into maneuvers no sane pilot would attempt, torch drive flaring as they skimmed the edge of a gravity well. Morales led Marines to the outer hull, rigging improvised railguns from cargo cannons. Hale barked orders with calm fury, holding the crew together as the ship bucked under fire. But it was Evelyn who made the difference, plugged into the shard's interface. She guided the ship's systems with thought alone, shields bent to her, will absorbing hits that should have torn them apart. Weapons targeted weak points invisible to sensors, striking with surgical precision. For the first time, a human-controlled vessel went toe-to-toe with Ketheri hunters and won. When the last enemy ship exploded in a silent bloom of fire, the crew didn't cheer. They just sat in stunned silence, hearts hammering. They'd done the impossible, but the victory carried a warning. Evelyn collapsed again, neural activity spiking dangerously. Dr. Patel stabilized her, but the truth was clear. Resonance was killing her, burning her brain every time she connected. Still, Evelyn's message was firm when she recovered. The shard is only the beginning. There are more, each one a piece of the sequence. If we don't find them, the Ketheri will. And if they complete the sequence first. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Hale gathered the crew. We've got a choice. We can turn this over to the Federation, let them play their games. Or we can do what we've always done, figure it out ourselves. Morales spat into a rag. Federation'll just lock it in a vault. If this stuff's meant for us, then it's on us to see it through. Keegan grinned, half crazed. Besides, when have we ever played it safe? The decision was unanimous. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were treasure hunters, guardians of a legacy no one else could claim. Word spread fast. By the time the Magellan II returned to safer space, the galaxy was already buzzing. Humans had gone into the expanse and come back alive. They'd fought Ketheri and won, and they'd uncovered builder tech that dwarfed anything the Federation had hoarded. The politics turned ugly. Federation envoys demanded access. Rival species called for sanctions. Some even suggested disarming humanity by force. But the tide of public opinion was shifting. Broadcasts of human defiance, images of their unlikely victories, spread like wildfire. Ordinary citizens across the galaxy began to admire the very qualities their leaders feared. The grit, the recklessness, the refusal to yield. Evelyn watched it unfold from her recovery bed, a storm of thoughts churning in her head. Humanity wasn't ready for worship. They weren't ready to lead a galaxy. But the builders hadn't asked if they were ready. They'd just left the keys. And the Ketheri weren't slowing down. Their fleets grew bolder, their weapons more twisted. By builder corruption, whole systems burned. refugees flooded into Federation space, carrying horror stories of predators who didn't conquer, they consumed. Hale stood at the viewport one night, staring into the black. Evelyn joined him, pale but standing, the shard pulsing faintly in her hands. "You think we can really do this?" she asked. He didn't look away from the stars. "I don't know, but I know this. Nobody else is even gonna try. So yeah, it's on us for the first time in its fractured history." The Federation had no choice but to rally behind humanity. The Assembly declared a unified war council, naming humans as resonant commanders, an unprecedented move that shifted the balance of power overnight. But Evelyn knew the truth. The Kethri weren't the end of the story. They were just the beginning, because somewhere out there, beyond even the Shatter Expanse, the full sequence waited. And if the Builders had designed it to awaken in human hands, then the final test of their species hadn't yet begun. The war had stopped being numbers on tactical maps. It was everywhere, creeping into dreams, into the way people spoke in hushed tones, into the raw hunger in every refugee's eyes. The Kethri weren't just raiders anymore, they were a storm swallowing stars. Systems fell like dominoes, outposts burned, Federation fleets scattered, regrouped, fought, and bled. For every skirmish, humans turned into a victory through grit and recklessness. The Kethri struck back twice as hard somewhere else. The War Council feared it was only a matter of time before the predators reached Earth itself. And then Evelyn had another vision. She was standing in the ruins of a city she'd never seen. The sky torn with fire. Voices, dozens, hundreds spoke at once, weaving into a chorus that rattled her bones. The sequence is incomplete. The key lies where the stars fold. Bring the shards, awaken the gate. When she jolted awake, Hale was already leaning against the medbay doorframe, arms crossed, as if he'd known she'd have something new. "Another breadcrumb?" he asked. She nodded. "Not a breadcrumb. The end of the trail. The gate." The War Council hated the idea. They argued humanity was chasing ghosts, wasting time while fleets died. But Hale and the crew didn't wait for permission. The Magellan launched under cover of chaos, torch drive flaring as they vanished into the black once more. This time, they weren't alone. Volunteers from every corner of the galaxy joined the Malians, who'd seen what humans could do, who believed the wild-eyed bipeds had a chance at something bigger. Ivethi gunners, Lyarkani engineers, Dravik healers, even a few Federation officers, who risked treason to follow. They carried the Shards 3 now, scavenged from battlefields and dead stations, each one resonating to a different human hand. Evelyn, morals against all odds, and a young recruit from Mars who'd shown up on the Magellan without orders, but with a resonance pattern stronger than anyone had seen. The journey took them to the Fold-An anomaly, at the galaxy's edge where light itself bent into. Impossible. Arc's no Federation map dared mark it. Ships sent here never returned. At the Fold's heart floated the gate dot. It was colossal, dwarfing moons, a ring of obsidian and crystal veined with glowing lines. It hummed with power even dormant, like a heartbeat stretched across eons. The moment the shards came within range, the gate stirred, symbols racing across its surface in recognition. But so did the Kethri. A fleet unlike anything yet seen emerged from the shadows. Dozens of ships, vast and black, led by a behemoth that eclipsed the gate itself. It wasn't just a battleship. It was alive, pulsing, its hull fused with twisted builder technology. The comms crackled. A voice, cold and jagged, echoed across every channel. "You are trespassers in a legacy that is not yours. We are the true heirs of the Builder's fire. You are nothing but children playing with matches." Hale didn't bother responding. He just said two words to the crew: hold steady. The battle that followed wasn't a clash of fleets. It was survival at the edge of apocalypse. The Magellan II, empowered by shards, fought like no human ship ever had, shields bending, weapons striking with impossible precision. Alien allies fought shoulder to shoulder with humans, improvising, adapting, refusing to give ground. Morales led boarding actions against Cathari raiders, welding hull breaches shut with one hand and firing rifles with the other. Keegan turned the torch drive into a weapon, flipping the ship through microjumps that left the enemy firing at ghosts. And Evelyn stood at the gate's core, shards blazing in resonance with her mind. Every connection seared her nerves. Every surge of energy pushed her closer to collapse. But she didn't let go. The gate responded. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message, a signal carried across dimensions, awakening dormant structures scattered through the galaxy. Ancient defenses, hidden for millennia, stirred to life in every corner of space. Stations once thought derelict blazed with power. Satellites no one had understood unfolded into fleets of autonomous drones. The builders hadn't left humanity weapons to use, they'd left them an alarm to ring. And humanity had just rung it. The Cathari flagship roared, its living hull warping under the strain as the awakened defenses targeted it. The combined firepower of ancient machines and desperate mortals tore through the Predator fleet, scattering survivors into the void. The behemoth screamed across calm channels as it broke apart, a death cry echoing into silence. When the last shot faded, the gate stood open, an abyss of light swirling within its ring. Evelyn collapsed, the shards dimming in her hands. Hale caught her, lowering her gently to the deck. Her pulse was weak, her skin pale, but her eyes fluttered open just long enough to whisper, "It's not over. The gate leads somewhere. The builders are gone, but what they left, it's waiting." The council wanted the gate sealed. They wanted to study it for decades, to argue and bicker while the galaxy licked its wounds. But the people, humans, aliens, refugees, had seen who had lit the fire, who had rallied them against extinction. They didn't want delay. They wanted hope. And hope, improbably, wore a human face. In the aftermath, humanity wasn't just another Federation member. They were leaders, innovators, wildcards. Colonies that once begged for protection now became strongholds of resilience. Other species sought human advisors, human soldiers, even human teachers wanting to learn what made these fragile bipeds so unstoppable. It wasn't technology. It wasn't strength. It was something harder to quantify: grit, stubbornness, the refusal to quit even when the math said they were already dead. The war wasn't over. The Cathari still lurked in the shadows. The gate still loomed, unanswered questions shimmering in its light. But for the first time, the galaxy wasn't afraid, because humans had proven something no one else dared believe. They didn't just survive. They changed the game, and as Hale stood with Evelyn, Morales, Keegan, and the rest of the crew before the gate, watching stars bend in ways no human eye had ever seen, he muttered the words that would become legend across every corner of the galaxy. "Well, let's see what's on the other side."